Good afternoon, I'm James Ezimoha and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. The Pentagon says U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear sites have delayed Tehran's nuclear program by nearly 2 years. Israel's Foreign Affairs Minister says the country is committed to reaching a ceasefire with Hamas. U.S. President Donald Trump demands resignation from Fed Chair Jerome Powell. The Pentagon says that U.S. military strikes on Iran's key nuclear facilities have delayed Tehran's nuclear program by up to 2 years. However, the International Atomic Energy Agency warns that Iran is capable of resuming uranium enrichment within months.
The Pentagon has announced that U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear sites have delayed Tehran's nuclear program by nearly 2 years. The Pentagon's assessment of damage around Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan remains unchanged, saying that all 3 sites have been completely obliterated. The U.S. and its allies say the program has been significantly degraded.
Interesting kind of side point about this, Tara, is that all of the conversations that we've had since Operation Midnight Hammer with our allies all around the world, but certainly also in the region, they say a couple of things. They share our sentiments about the degradation of Iran's nuclear program and the fact that we have degraded their program by 1 to 2 years. At least intel assessments inside the department assess that, and I think their intelligence shares that conclusion.
Since the U.S. sent a group of B-2 stealth bombers to Iran on June 21st, Trump has consistently lashed out at any suggestions that the attacks did not wreck the country's nuclear facilities. He has maintained that Iran's nuclear program has been obliterated like nobody's ever seen before. An initial U.S. intelligence assessment, leaked to several media outlets last month, said the strikes failed to destroy key components of Iran's nuclear program and only delayed its work by months. For its part, Tehran has been evasive about providing details about the state of its nuclear sites. Some Iranian officials have said that the facilities sustained significant damage from U.S. and Israeli attacks, but Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei said last week that Trump had exaggerated the impact of the strikes.
Iran has confirmed significant damage to its civilian nuclear facilities following airstrikes by the U.S. and Israel. Tehran is now demanding compensation from Washington and Tel Aviv for the destruction caused.
Iran's government spokeswoman Fatemeh Mohajerani officially confirmed in a press conference that the country's nuclear facilities sustained serious damage in the military attacks by Israel and U.S. Her statement follows the remarks earlier this week by Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who described as serious the damage to Iran's nuclear sites. Araghchi, in a letter to UN Secretary General, demanded recognition of U.S. and Israel as aggressors of the war and called for compensation of war damages. Defying U.S. President Donald Trump's claims on complete obliteration of Iran's nuclear facilities, Tehran insists its indigenous nuclear knowledge is intact and that it will not give up enrichment rights under Non-Proliferation Treaty. Earlier, a leaked U.S. intelligence assessment revealed that the airstrikes on Iran's nuclear sites have only set its nuclear program back by months, not years. Following 2 weeks of media campaign by the Department of Defense and the White House, the Pentagon admitted its strikes set back Iran's nuclear program by 1 or 2 years, but not obliterated, as claimed by President Trump. In the meantime, Iran said the enriched materials were evacuated months beforehand from its nuclear sites, as Tehran has anticipated the attacks. Iran also said that a fast return to diplomacy was not possible because U.S. had not given guarantees it will not resort to military strikes again in the middle of negotiations. Turashir Alilu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
On Wednesday, Foreign Minister of Israel Gideon Saar, speaking in Tallinn, said Israel is committed to reaching a ceasefire with Hamas and securing the release of hostages to end the war in Gaza. At a press conference, the Israeli foreign minister also condemned Iran's suspension of nuclear oversight, urging swift international action to counter what he called a growing threat. He also reiterated Israel's readiness to end the war in Gaza. Hamas says it's reviewing new ceasefire proposals from Egypt and Qatar, but insists that any deal must guarantee a full Israeli withdrawal from the Strip and have a permanent end to hostilities.
Hamas still holds 50 of our hostages in crew captivity. The war can end tomorrow if it releases them and lays down its arms. We are serious in our will to reach a hostage deal and a ceasefire.
In Tel Aviv, families of Israeli hostages and their supporters are ramping up pressure on the government, demanding a ceasefire in Gaza and the immediate return of all captives. The protest follows claims by U.S. President Donald Trump that a ceasefire deal is within reach, but Hamas remains cautious.
Dozens of protesters gathered in Tel Aviv demanding a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of the 50 remaining Israeli hostages held by Hamas. The rally was organised by 101 Watch, a group of mothers and sisters of the captives. Demonstrators held banners reading, "Bring them home," and President Trump stop the war, while displaying photos of captives.
I think that there is no ceasefire until the tanks and guns and RPGs stop firing. That's when there's a ceasefire, not when someone makes a public statement. We understand that President Trump is very, very engaged in bringing an end to the war in Gaza and returning the hostages. But I live in Israel. I'm a citizen of Israel. My government in Israel needs to be at least that engaged and more engaged. It is our responsibility to stop the war and return the hostages.
Tensions rose after nightfall when protesters blocked roads. Police issued warnings and detained several demonstrators. The protest comes a day after President Trump said Israel had agreed to a proposed 60-day ceasefire with Hamas. The group said it was reviewing the deal, but insisted any agreement must include an Israeli withdrawal from Gaza and an end to the war.
The latest statement from U.S. President Donald Trump regarding a possible ceasefire in Gaza has sparked cautious optimism among Palestinians as the conflict enters its 21st month. Residents of the Strip say they are desperate for a permanent end to the violence.
US President Donald Trump's announcement that Israel has agreed to the conditions for a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza has sparked hope among Palestinians suffering from the ongoing conflict. President Trump made the statement in a social media post on the 1st of July, noting that a final proposal would be delivered to Hamas through the mediation of Qatar and Egypt. According to Trump, the announcement followed a long and productive meeting between US representatives and Israeli officials. Against the backdrop of a war that has continued for 21 months, the ceasefire statement offered a glimmer of hope for Gaza residents.
We heard yesterday in the news that US President Donald Trump announced a decision that he will stop the war on Gaza. We hope this decision happens as soon as possible, because frankly, we are tired and had enough of the injustice and the genocide we're being subjected to.
We want a complete end to the war on Gaza. Not like every time, a partial agreement and ceasefire that lasts a month or two, then the war returns. No, we want a complete end to this war and this genocide, with them taking their hostages, releasing our prisoners held in their jails, the rebuilding of Gaza, and bringing life back to our people in Gaza Strip.
According to Gaza health officials, at least 20 people were killed in Israeli airstrikes on Wednesday, the 2nd of July.
We hope he's honest this time. We're used to him not being honest in the previous times. We hope he is serious, like he was serious during the Israeli-Iranian war, when he said the war should stop, and it stopped. Trump can stop the war if he wants to.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing increasing domestic pressure, with the public demanding a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and an end to the war. However, hardliners within his coalition continue to oppose such an agreement. The conflict began on the 7th of October 2023, when Hamas fighters launched an attack on Israeli territory. According to Israeli figures, 1,200 people, the majority of them civilians, were killed, and 251 others were taken hostage and brought back to Gaza. It was the deadliest single-day attack in Israel's history. In response, Israel launched a large-scale military offensive. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, more than 56,000 Palestinians, most of them civilians, have been killed to date. Nearly the entire population of the Gaza Strip, which is home to 2.3 million people, has been displaced, and the region now faces a severe humanitarian crisis.
Let's talk to Lieutenant General Marco Saronia about Benjamin Netanyahu's next visit to the White House and Donald Trump's desire to secure a ceasefire in Gaza. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Now, what are the biggest challenges Prime Minister Netanyahu faces in choosing between a ceasefire and continuing the military campaign in Gaza?
Let's see. I'm quite sure that Donald Trump, President Trump, will have enough power to push for at least a stop in the hostilities for the next 60 days. So it's important. It's very important for him and he has been able to do it with between Iran and Israel after the 12 days war, as he called it. And now it's more or less the same thing. It's important for the United States to have a more quiet environment in the Middle East, trying to figure out a multi-vectorial approach for all the problems that the Middle East has to cope in the near future. So for Donald Trump, stopping the hostilities, I don't know if it's stopping the war for the time being is a ceasefire. And after using that ceasefire at the end of the stopping the hostilities to solve some problems, the exchange of the hostage, or some of the hostage at this point for the prisoners, but at least have a window to give more humanitarian help for the people in Gaza. So I suppose that it's not. In my view, it's impossible for Netanyahu to impeach that. As for Hamas, if Hamas don't accept this stopping of the hostilities, will be, I suppose, a very huge problem, not only for Hamas but for the Palestinian people in Gaza, because this is a green light for the continuity of the hostilities. That is not good, not for Israel. Not for the Palestinians, of course, and not for the general security environment in the Middle East. It's important to stop the war in the next stage. It tried to create some window to work around the opportunity to have a roadmap for the future of Gaza, the future of the Middle East, the future of the security in the region. That's important to stop the war now.
Now, sir, how important is the role of the U.S., especially President Trump, in pushing for a ceasefire agreement?
Look, I suppose that is the only one that can do that. No one can do it. We have experienced in the last almost 2 years that from the Israeli side it will be difficult to have to stop the war, even for internal problems inside the government, of course. But without having a way out that provides some security for the Israeli state. That's important also for Israel, and for the Palestinians. It's needed to keep in mind that the future is not with Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist group, and I suppose that the Palestinians should have the chance to have. I don't know, with the authoritarian the Palestinian Authority, of course, with more leverage from the Palestinian Authority side, find a way out to govern Gaza in the near future that leads to a peaceful way. It's that ended. Donald Trump is the only one that can do it. Maybe 1 month ago, nobody believed that Donald Trump could have imposed a ceasefire between Iran and Israel, and he did it. So it's I suppose that's the only one. It's important for the United States because the United States have a view for the Middle East of peace. Yeah, I know that, for peace, all the governments, all the countries can improve their lives. Of course, we are not going to have a solution for all the problems of Middle East, a lot of them, but at least peace, it's important to put people sitting together and to diplomatically try to exchange views, to figure out solutions for the several problems that the region has. Even Israel, even the United States, as you know, and Israel also. So open some links with Syria also to try to involve Syria. Iran should be involved also in the security architecture of the Middle East security. It's important also. So it's the main thing is stopping hostilities and try to figure out a solution and put people seated together to discuss and to come to terms with the end of the war and find political solutions for the conflicts.
Thank you very much for your time and insight, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
The Ukraine cities of Poltava and Odessa have been hit by recent Russian attacks. The strikes caused civilian casualties and fires in residential buildings. Meanwhile, the U.S. has halted the delivery of weapons to Ukraine for strategic reasons.
On the morning of 3rd July, Russian missile strikes on the city of Poltava in Ukraine resulted in 2 fatalities and 11 injuries. The attack caused fires at a conscription office and a nearby private residence. Emergency services are at the scene, with further updates expected. Another strike took place in Odessa, where Russian drones struck a multi-story residential building. At least 5 people, including 2 children, were injured. The fire spread from the 7th to the 9th floor, prompting the evacuation of 50 residents. A 7-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl were hospitalized for smoke inhalation. 6 apartments were completely destroyed, and 36 others suffered partial damage. An aid station has been set up on site, with psychologists providing support to the affected residents. Meanwhile, the US halted the delivery of weapons to Ukraine that were scheduled to be sent from Poland. The Pentagon stated this pause is due to a strategic defense review. The suspended shipments include PC-3 Patriot missiles, Stinger air defense systems, and Hellfire missiles. The decision has faced criticism from both Democratic and Republican politicians in Washington. On 29th June, Russia launched its largest aerial assault on Ukraine to date, causing significant damage to civilian infrastructure. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte emphasized the importance of continued Western support for Kyiv, acknowledging US interests but stressing Ukraine's urgent need for all available assistance.
US President Donald Trump has intensified his feud with Fed Chair Jerome Powell. He demanded on Truth Social that the too-late chair resign immediately after Federal Housing Finance Agency head Bill Pulte called for a congressional investigation into Powell's allegedly misleading Senate testimony about a $2.5 billion Fed headquarters renovation. Speaking from Portugal, Powell defended the Fed's independence and said rate cuts were postponed due to inflationary pressure caused by Trump's tariffs. US President Donald Trump has announced a new trade deal with Vietnam, reducing tariffs on imports to 20%. With the deadline approaching, countries are under increasing pressure to finalize agreements and avoid steep tariff hikes before the 9th of July.
The United States will impose a 20% tariff on Vietnamese imports under a new trade agreement, down from a previously threatened 46% levy. US President Donald Trump made the announcement on Wednesday. In return, Vietnam will eliminate tariffs on US goods, granting what Trump called total access to American products. However, the new deal will also target transshipping, goods from other countries, especially China, that are deliberately routed through Vietnam to avoid tariffs. These will face a 40% levy, part of Trump's effort to crack down on what he calls trade loopholes. While the tax hikes are technically imposed on Vietnamese goods, they're paid by US importers who often pass costs on to consumers, raising concerns about inflation and disrupted supply chains. Vietnam, now a major hub for companies such as Nike and Apple, exported $16.6 billion in textiles and garments to the States in 2024, making it the country's top export market. One major exporter, Thai Sun SP, which supplies fashion brands worldwide, said it's diversifying to markets in Russia, China and the Middle East to hedge against US trade risks. The tax hikes stem from Trump's April Liberation Day event, which introduced new levies on dozens of countries. These included a 24% tariff on Japanese imports and 20% on goods from the European Union. While Trump and administration officials recently suggested the tariff deadline might be extended, the president told reporters on Tuesday that he is not planning an extension and is notifying countries of their new tariff rates. With the 9th of July deadline looming, other countries are now under pressure to finalize agreements and avoid steep tariff hikes.
Meanwhile, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung says he's focused on securing a fair trade deal with the United States. Earlier, the U.S. raised concerns over South Korea's non-tariff barriers, noting that Seoul already imposes near-zero tariffs on American goods under a free trade deal. Meanwhile, Lee emphasized the importance of dialogue with North Korea and pledged further efforts to ease tensions. The two countries remain technically at war, as no peace treaty was signed following the 1953 armistice. At least 18 people were shot, 4 fatally, in a drive-by shooting in Chicago. The local police department said that the incident occurred at 11 p.m. when someone in a dark vehicle driving past a crowd on a sidewalk fired into the group. Multiple U.S. outlets reported a nightclub in the River North neighborhood was hosting an album launch party. No arrests have been made as of yet, as the investigation continues. Liverpool's Portuguese forward Diogo Jota and his brother were killed in a car crash early Thursday in the northwest of Spain. According to Spanish authorities, Jota and his brother died after the vehicle veered off the road and burst into flames. The police said in a statement that evidence at the scene of the crash near the city of Zamora suggests Jota's car suffered a burst tire while overtaking. Dozens of wildfires are raging across coastal regions of Turkey and Greece, forcing mass evacuations from residential areas. Emergency crews are battling the flames as high winds and extreme heat make containment efforts more difficult.
Wildfires are sweeping through coastal regions of Turkey and Greece, forcing mass evacuations of people from their homes and putting emergency services on high alert amid extreme heat, strong winds and dangerously dry conditions. In Turkey, wildfires have triggered emergency declarations across multiple provinces. The government has officially designated parts of Izmir and Bilecik as disaster zones after fires destroyed more than 270 buildings, killed over 1,100 animals, and left communities without power. Health officials also reported hospitalizations linked to smoke inhalation, while extensive damage was recorded across farmland and rural infrastructure. The most intense blaze continues in the resort town of Çeşme. 3 neighborhoods were evacuated, and the Izmir-Çeşme highway was shut as fire crews battled advancing fronts. Firefighting efforts involve 6 planes, 19 helicopters, and a nationwide deployment of over 25,000 personnel. In Hatay, more than 1,400 residents were forced to flee before the fires were contained. Additional flare-ups were also reported in Manisa, Menderes, and Bilachik, where strong winds and high temperatures continue to pose serious risks. Meanwhile, in Greece, wildfires have devastated parts of Crete. A blaze near the municipality of Ierapetra has forced the evacuation of over 1,500 people and tourists. At least 4 people have been hospitalized due to smoke inhalation, and homes have been destroyed in Agia Photia, where power has been cut. The fire front spans at least 6 kilometers, fanned by gale force winds. Authorities closed key roads and used emergency alerts to warn residents. 155 firefighters, 38 fire engines, and 4 helicopters are on the ground, with reinforcements arriving from Athens and Elefsina by ferry and air. Additional blazes are also burning in Halkidiki and Kythera, as Greece remains on high wildfire alert during an early and intense heat wave.
With just one day to go until the main event of ECO Week, the 17th ECO Summit, the Azerbaijani city of Khankendi is preparing to welcome guests from across the region. Our correspondent Narchichek Jahangiri reports from Karabakh.
It is a busy July day in Khankendi as the city prepares to welcome high officials and delegates from 10 countries. With counting hours left to the 17th Economic Cooperation Organization Summit, a lot is going on both inside and outside the venue. Speaking about the location, right here in Karabakh, a region reborn from conflict, a different kind of alliance is taking shape. One that's not just about borders, but bridges. A regional organization with global relevance. That's the vision behind the Economic Cooperation Organization, or ECO. And right now that vision is taking center stage in Azerbaijan. ECO is a regional bloc stretching across 10 countries, home to over 460 million people. Spanning the Middle East, South Caucasus and Central Asia, the organization represents a shared ambition to strengthen economic ties, unlock connectivity and face shared challenges together. Founded in 1964 and relaunched in 1985, ECO has since grown into a platform for collaboration in trade, energy, transport, environment and more. But while the potential is enormous, much of it still remains unrealized. So this week, ECO is doing more than just talking. Tomorrow, presidents, prime ministers and high officials will gather in Khankendi to attend the ECO summit. It's here that strategic decisions are expected to be made, from boosting trade and infrastructure links to coordinating on climate and energy policy. We'll be here to update you with the latest news, so stay tuned to A News. I'm Narchichek Jahangiri, together with Nijat Kasimov, reporting from Khankendi.
An Azerbaijani-based research organization says its anti-colonial initiatives have come under coordinated attack. The Baku Initiative Group, known for advocating decolonization and global justice, is accusing France of cyber attacks, unlawful detention, and systemic information suppression.
Baku Initiative Group, an international non-governmental organization for the study of modern ideologies and globalization, promotes academic dialogue on decolonization, human rights, and social justice across former colonial territories. But its recent activities appear to have drawn pushback. In June, the Institute's website was crippled by coordinated cyber attacks. According to Baku Initiative Group's internal assessment, most of the IP addresses behind the attacks were traced to French territory.
Notably, aforementioned cyber attacks coincided during the last 2 Baku Initiative Group's events. The one of them was dedicated to decolonization of Guadeloupe, and the other one, International Scientific Conference. It is particularly significant that the majority of these cyber attacks were conducted in the territory of France. In my opinion, such actions by French government against our organization's transparent activity. It was just a concern of French government, which preferred to maintain their colonial policy in the 21st century.
The pressure, however, wasn't limited to cyberspace. On their return home, several foreign delegates were allegedly stopped at Paris airports where they faced hours of questioning.
For example, one of the distinguished delegates from Guadeloupe, former member of European Parliament, the General Secretary of UPLJ, Mr. Jean-Jacques Bitsep, was interrogated for several hours by the representatives of French External Security Service.
The Institute condemns what it describes as deliberate efforts to silence critical voices, warning that such measures contradict France's image as a defender of democracy and human rights. Beyond political pressure, Baku Initiative Group also highlighted structural inequalities between mainland France and its overseas territories, especially in digital access.
For example, France intentionally restricted the internet access in overseas territories. In comparison with mainland France, they are used in overseas territories, they are used outdated internet infrastructure. Also, prices are artificially inflated, and speed of internet is weak and limited. In mainland France, internet speed and quality better than 20 times better than in overseas territories.
They say this digital divide is part of a broader pattern aimed at limiting global awareness of continuing colonial-era policies. The Baku Initiative Group also pointed to international criticism of French law enforcement and detention practices. A recent UN report highlighted serious overcrowding in French prisons, some operating at 300% capacity, raising questions about the integrity of the institutions conducting these detentions.
I think it's essential to emphasize that inadequate performance of France's law enforcement agencies also highlighted at the international level. For example, a report published by the United Nations Committee Against Torture states that prison overcrowding in France, that's at 131%, which some facilities researching 100%. While the prison system is designed to accommodate 61,000 prisoners, in France now 79,000 persons are currently jailed.
The organization says it will not be deterred. It vows to continue organizing global forums and supporting the just struggle against all forms of colonial domination.
Regional connectivity is being boosted by a major green energy corridor project designed to support the energy transition and promote sustainable development. This joint project will be co-developed by Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. And with more details, we are joined live from Brussels by Oybek Shehov, Secretary General of Europe-Uzbekistan Association for Economic Cooperation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, how will this Azerbaijan-Kazakhstan-Uzbekistan partnership enhance energy security and support sustainable development across the region?
We see, of course, a lot of regionalization in the world in the recent years. And one of the important things when it comes to energy systems is collaboration and integration of different energy systems, which enhance resilience, diversification, regional coherence. And we know that the success of European energy system, for example, during difficult times was thanks to the resilience and common integration. And this is something that also Central Asia and Azerbaijan are trying to move towards. We saw these trends in Central Asia over the past period. Now we see Azerbaijan being integrated with new projects, high voltage cable across the Caspian. This will allow both Central Asia and the Caspian region to have much more energy security moving forward, especially when it comes to renewables.
Now, what is the projected timeline, including feasibility studies, infrastructure build-out, and first green power exports to Europe?
Of course, this is a very complex project. And now we are talking about moving away from fossil fuels. This is a renewable initiative. So initially the MOU was signed in May 2024. Now a launch date for the feasibility studies was already last year. This year we expect by mid-25 full finalization. The final stage, let's say, was already announced in June 25. JV formation July this year. And then, of course, the projects will run. They will what we will really see starting the real on-the-ground infrastructure is 2026, up to probably 28. And you will have financing challenges, of course, for this kind of scale of the project. 2030 is the declared implementation date. That's when the energy should start flowing towards the EU corridor, hopefully with all things being aligned.
Now, finally, how is this large-scale initiative being financed, and which international partners or institutions are expected to support it?
Of course, we are moving away from fossil projects. That means this kind of project becomes very interesting for pretty much all international financial institutions. This is in line with the Global Sustainable Development Goals, EU strategy towards diversification, and the EU strategy towards renewables. The same when we look at national strategies in Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. I think it's Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan are attempting to have 35% of their energy generated by renewables by 2030. Uzbekistan is actually over 50% of that. So that means the main finding will come from the international financial institutions in the beginning. You have ADB, AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, interested. You have alignment with EU's Global Gateway strategy, which means European Investment Bank will be very much interested in this project. It's early to say, but of course, private funding will also be available for this for sure. Big companies, Masdar, Total, Aqua, have all expressed one way or another in different forums interest and participation in this type of project. So we'll see plenty of different sources of this type of project, and I think it's a very good alignment with international financing, the way we see global infrastructure project being financed in the next 10 years.
Thank you very much for your time and insight.
Thank you.
Construction has begun in Kyrgyzstan on a major railway route that will connect China, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. Our Fariza Kalimoziner has the details.
Kyrgyzstan has launched one of Central Asia's largest infrastructure projects, an international railway linking China, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. Bakat Turbayev, deputy chairman of the Kyrgyz cabinet, announced that the route will span over 304 kilometers within Kyrgyzstan, with nearly 40% crossing difficult mountainous areas. This requires building 27 tunnels and 41 bridges. The project's estimated cost is $4.7 billion, with completion expected by 2030. The project, which follows more than 20 years of negotiations between the regional countries and China, was launched in December last year and has now entered an active construction phase. Unlike Kazakhstan, which already has a developed rail network connection China and Europe, this route offers an alternative transport corridor for Central Asia. Some experts say the project challenges Moscow's and Kazakhstan's free transport monopolies in Eurasia. Meanwhile, it strengthens Uzbekistan's role as a regional logistics hub. In last year, Uzbekistan transported about 1.52 billion tons of cargo, reflecting growing capacity and demand for transport services. Monetary growth is also strong. By June this year, the transport services market reached around $5.58 billion, up 14% year on year. Most of this market is concentrated in the capital. And the transport sector is a major driver of the overall $29.5 billion services market. Earlier this year, Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev set a target to boost transport services exports to $3 billion. And the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan railway could play a vital role in reaching this goal, strengthening trade links and opening new east-west logistics opportunities. Fariza Kalimurzina, A News in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.